Listen, there are a lot of podcasts about the black church in the vein of Larry Reed and King Jives.
Yikes.
But if you're looking for a podcast about the black church that's thoughtful, informative, substantive, stimulating, then you need to subscribe to Black Church Chats. That's right. I need you to hit that subscribe button and then also hit the notification bell so that you'll know every time we go live. All right, on to the show. What's going on? There we okay, there we are. There we go. Okay. What's up? Welcome to Black Church Chats. This happens every single time I go live now. This is becoming like a normal thing. Got to get that right, and I will get that right. What's up, y'all? Happy Monday. It is rainy and wet and soupy here in Southern California, but that's all right because after it rains in Southern California, it is beautiful. I mean, you can see for miles and miles and miles. So I'm excited about the rain, and I'm excited about after it rains. So let's see. What's up, Chris Gibson? Salute to you, Chris Gibson. Hey, my mom too is in the building as well. Mom Myrtle is here. It's her birthday tomorrow, y'all. So wish my second mom a happy birthday. Rochelle, Sister Rochelle, who's going to be serving today as one of the moderators. Hello, Rochelle. Good to see you. My aunties are here as well. Auntie Melissa, Auntie Millicent. Love you guys so much. Melody's child and key is here as well. How are you, sis? Good to see you. Destiny in Christ. Hello, Destiny in Christ, one of our members. Good evening to you. Listen. You thought it never rained in Southern California. You were lied to, my brother. Look, Tony. They're not even from Southern California. They're from Northern California. So they shouldn't have been speaking on Southern California business anyway. Yes. It's so good to see y'all. Welcome to Black Church Chats. I am your host, Pastor Isaiah. If you have not subscribed to this channel, please subscribe. Would love for you to be a part of this community. We're gonna have a good conversation today, an important conversation today, a conversation that's being had in some areas and sectors of evangelicalism, but this conversation isn't being had enough. We need to have this conversation more because y'all, we're in trouble. And I'm not an alarmist. If you know me, you know that I'm not an alarmist. You know that I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I tend to laugh at the people in tinfoil hats that see conspiracies everywhere. I try to be sober-minded as possible. And so just know, when I say that we're in trouble, I'm not intentionally stoking fear. I am not trying to be unnecessarily provocative. I'm expressing the way I feel because I see what's going on. And I am an observer of current events. And I appreciate those of you that are watching as well. I appreciate those of you that you see the urgency, you see what's happening. And I appreciate those of you speaking out, whether it's through podcasts, articles, or whether you're just having conversations with friends, family, and coworkers. I appreciate you speaking out. We need a chorus of voices to arise to address this very insidious, pernicious, and dangerous problem. I'm talking about Christian nationalism. And you can see here on this channel that my focus has even somewhat shifted. Now, not all the way, not completely, but my focus has even somewhat shifted since the death of Charlie Kirk, because I too underestimated the the potency and the proliferation of Christian nationalism. I knew it was out there, and I knew that it was a problem, and it is a problem. But I really wasn't talking about it. I wasn't addressing it. And I'm be honest with you, I didn't really care about it too much. I didn't. I just thought I thought they were the fringe. Nobody was really listening. And then we had the death of Charlie Kirk. And I began to see the festering, rotting, moldy underbelly of American evangelicalism that is Christian nationalism. And I began to see this heretical, deranged perversion of Christianity ascending and becoming far more vocal, far more popular, and yes, far more influential. And I think I underestimated Christian nationalism to our detriment. I think we are underestimating Christian nationalism to our detriment. We need to talk about this, and we're going to talk about this today. The subtitle of this broadcast is A Wake-Up Call for the Black Church. And I'm going to explain why I subtitled this broadcast that way after I read what I wrote on my Facebook page this morning. So this morning, this is what I wrote. I wrote, have you been paying attention? Tucker Carlson just platformed neo-Nazi Nick Fuentes on his show. The interview has already amassed 6.2 million views and continues to be shared across social media. Meanwhile, Donald Trump, who is supposed to represent all Americans, publicly defended Carlson. He praised Carlson for saying good things about me over the years and dismissed concerns by saying that if Carlson wants to interview Nick Fuentes, who's a Nazi, by the way, whose followers believe they are preserving America's white Christian identity, then people have to decide. Which implies whatever you decide is perfectly fine. It's up to you. You can decide to oppose Nick Fuentes, or you can decide to support Nick Fuentes. What's implied by our president is that, hey, that's a part of civil discourse in a society where we value free speech. What Trump did not do. He offered no condemnation of Carlson and no condemnation of Fuentes. Fuentes, in turn, celebrated Trump's response. So imagine that, being celebrated by a neo-Nazi. What's up, JM? Salute to you, my brother. Another great moderator in here as well. Imagine that. Imagine being celebrated by a neo-Nazi. Commended, applauded by a neo-Nazi. Fuentes, in turn, celebrated Trump's response, posting, "Thank you, Mr. President," alongside a video of his interaction with reporters. This is not a small moment. This is not political theater. This is the mainstreaming of white nationalism wrapped in religious language. Christian nationalism is the number one apologetic and political threat facing the church today. And I'm going to talk about why that is the case. I continue. And while much of American evangelicalism remains mired in confusion, complicity, and cowardice on this issue, the Black church must stand firm, sound the alarm, and issue a prophetic clarion call. Repent. I started off this written screed by saying this in all caps. Historically, the Black church has served as the conscience of this country, and now more than ever, America needs our voice. So that's why I subtitled this broadcast A Wake-Up Call for the Black Church. Because hear me, America needs us. It's always needed us, even when it didn't recognize it. It's always needed us, even when it resented us, and even as it resents us, it needs us. But it needs us now more than ever. And one of the reasons why we must step up and be the conscience of this nation is because American evangelicalism, by and large, is out to lunch on this issue. They are completely. I think I wrote it. I said American evangelicalism remains mired in confusion, complicity, and cowardice on this issue. We cannot expect American evangelicals who, by and large, support this movement to have anything meaningful to say, to mount any meaningful resistance, because they are just clueless. Let me give you an example. And disclaimer. I am going to mention some people, some personalities. You are going to see some images and hear some names. You may very well be a fan of some of the people mentioned. I'm telling you right now, I'm mentioning them because it's necessary, not because I'm trying to hate, not because I'm, trying to start a food fight. I'm mentioning them because my expectation is for the most prominent and loudest voices within American quote unquote Christianity to be voices of moral clarity. I'm expecting them to see what the rest of us are saying, and use their discernment and the influence of their pulpits to bring attention to this apologetic and political issue. And if they're not, then in that way, they're contributing to the problem. This is not a commentary on their overall ministry. This is not a commentary on the other great things that they're doing. I'm saying on this issue, which is absolutely a defining issue of our time. We're gonna see some things. We're gonna walk through some things. My expectation is not necessarily that everybody podcasts or everybody, writes editorials, or that's not the expectation. The expectation, though, is that those that have the biggest platforms and claim to be filled with the Spirit of God, who gives us discernment, they are at least saying something. They are at least recognizing the problem and the threat, and not completely, totally out to lunch and ignoring it. I know that may be too lofty of an expectation. I know that expectation may be too much, but I do have that expectation, particularly for the quote unquote Christian celebrities. But evangelicalism is just out to lunch. Let me give you an example. Let me give you an example. So this is a post made by Philip Anthony Mitchell. And I told you I was going to name some names, and I was going to present some personalities. So I'm asking everybody to be objective. I don't care if you're a fan. Be objective. This is what he wrote. He said this. He said, it's one thing to invade a nation by force. It's another when that nation invites her future persecutors into positions of power. Is he talking about Christian nationalism? Future persecutors into positions of power. Okay. Oh, America. Our children will suffer the painful consequences of our blindness and spiritual apathy if we don't wake up. Lord, stir up your bride. A religious takeover is coming, and time is running out. Is he addressing Christian nationalism here? Is he ringing the alarm, trying to make us aware of the absolute number one threat, apologetically and politically? Is he calling all of us to lean into this conversation and defend the gospel and even defend this country from the onslaught of Christian nationalism? Listen to this.
I'm telling y'all right now what's going to happen. You're going to look up 20 years from now, the Bible's going to be illegal. Sharia law will dominate all of your countries. We'll be persecuted by Islam from one house to the next. And then we're going to say stuff like, I wish I would have listened to the message. And you know who's going to pay the price? The next generation. He said this faith came down to us. We got to hand it down to the next generation, and it came to you and I in blood. I just want to remind you that Bible you have in your lap, a man died for you to have that Bible.
Islam. American evangelicals think that Islam is the number one threat to Christians, Christianity, and to America. Now, I am not a Muslim. I understand the problems with Islamic Sharia law. I understand that the Quran is virtually incapable of drawing a line and condemning jihadism and suicide bombing, because it's all over the Quran is all over the map on the issue of using violence to further the causes of Islam. I am not saying, hear me well and hear me clearly, I am not saying that Islam is not a threat. But the number one threat to the point where we're actually taking time in our pulpits and on our social media feeds to identify it as such, to warn. So it's not a matter of like taking a principle stand. Maybe a pastor may say, you know what? I just don't wade into these issues from the pulpit. I just don't. I'm not talking about Christian nationalism, and I'm not talking about Islam unless I'm in a text that requires me to. It's just, so I understand a pastor I disagree with it, but I understand a pastor taking that principle stance. That's not what's happening here. What's happening here is that the pulpit is being utilized to send a message. And the message is Islam. Islam is the most dangerous and imminent threat to Christianity into this country. And here's where I need to quote Spurgeon. Spurgeon famously said, discernment isn't the ability to tell right from wrong. Discernment is the ability to tell right from almost right. And evangelicalism, American evangelicalism, just lacks discernment. It cannot see the forest through the trees. And in a minute, I'm gonna show you the very clear and blatant things that should crystallize in all of our minds the reality that like Christian nationalism is the number one pressing threat that we face as Christians, and not just as Christians, but as Americans. Non-Christians would suffer greatly in a Christian nationalist regime. Let me also play this clip. I want to interact with this. Allie Beth Stuckey. Listen to this, y'all. Allie Beth Stuckey, who has a huge following. She was a TPUSA sweetheart. Listen. She kind of echoes Philip Anthony Mitchell. Listen.
My audience, before my dad's episode, what is your biggest national concern, political concern? By far. So I've got, 845,000 followers on Instagram, most of them Christian conservative women. And so I got thousands of responses. What is your biggest national political concern? By far, and this actually surprised me, the number one answer was Islam. The growing dominance of Islam. The feeling that, these churches are being replaced by mosques. And, wow, these leaders of places like New York City and Dearborn and Minnesota are Muslim. This is starting to look like Europe. This is starting to look a lot like the UK. And of course, you listened to or watched my episode with Raymond Ibrahim, and we talked about what Islam actually is. What does it actually believe? What does the Quran actually say? Why are there some verses that seem peaceful and some verses that seem very violent?
Now, remember, Islam, I think it's 1% of the American. Islam is 1% of the American population. I think who are the Muslim national politicians? Of course, he's not national. The mayor of New York, Zoran Mamdani, and I think I'm kind of putting my cards on the table right now, but I think a lot of this backlash against Islam, this current backlash against Islam, is a response to the election of Zoran Mamdani in New York. I think that his election to the mayoral office in New York has sparked deep Islamophobia within American evangelicalism that goes way back. And I'm about to read some in just a minute to show that. But I think Ilhan Omar is Muslim. There was a guy from Minnesota. I don't know if he's still there. Keith Ellison. I think he was a congressman, Muslim. Outside of that, I'm talking about national office. We have to exclude Zoran Mamdani because he's not national. Other than that, I don't know how many nationally elected Muslim politicians that we have. So if I'm right, we have two nationally elected practicing Muslims. And Islam is 1% of the U.S. population. But they're the number one threat. Let's continue listening to Allie Beth Stuckey, because I think as she goes on, her blindness and the blindness of American evangelicalism is laid bare. So listen, let me put her back on stage.
As a religion actually teach, and why does it manifest itself the way that it does? And why do Muslims move to non-Sharia countries if they want Sharia enacted everywhere? We answered all of those questions. He answered all of those questions. And a lot of you are very concerned by that. And so I posted this on X, that by far this was my biggest answer. And a lot of people, of course, agreed. And then I got this really strange reaction.
So then after she posted Islam is the number one threat, and she got agreement from her conservative Christian cabal. Yeah, it's the number one threat, Islam. Listen to what she says now. Now she's surprised, because then all of a sudden, listen to this.
Right. Or who say that they're on the right anyway, saying, oh, this is not true. I don't believe you. This is a post that's getting paid for. This is a sudden shift. This is like a propaganda movement from like the pro-Israel crowd on the right, from dispensationalists, blah, blah, blah. Okay, you know what? Pray to the Lord to heal your brainworms. Are you kidding me?
So after she posted that Islam is the biggest threat, she got a backlash. She experienced backlash from the anti-Semitic wing of MAGA. The wing of MAGA that's actually in league with Islam, in that they both don't like the Jews. So if you're not, right now, there's a major civil war going on in MAGA, where you've got Tucker Carlson and Candace Owen. They're coming at the Jews, and that's one of the reasons why Nick Fuentes was invited on Tucker Carlson's platform, is because Nick Fuentes is publicly, vocally no friend of the Jews. And then you have Officer Tatum and others. They love the Jews, right? And so Allie Beth Stuckey, Islam is the number one threat. And here comes the flood. All of the anti-Semitic, Nick Fuentes, Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens MAGA types swatted her like a little fly. And you would think that she would stop and say, wow, that's a lot of dissent. Wow. But instead, she just brushes them off. Instead, she just poo-poos these people rebuking her for calling Islam the number one threat. You would think that she would then turn her attention to those voices and want to drill down, say, what's really going on here? Because what's going on is a very vibrant and virulent movement called Christian Nationalism. And they don't just have two obscure nationally elected politicians. They have a president who is neither Christian nor a nationalist, but he is a racist. Donald Trump, he's not about America. He's about himself. Okay. All right. The ballroom says as much. But Donald Trump is definitely a white supremacist. And so we know where his sympathies lie. I think that Donald Trump would not mind ushering in a fascist ethno-state. So there's a sympathetic president. You've got Marjorie Taylor Greene, who, despite sounding somewhat rational recently, like, let's not forget who Marjorie Taylor Greene is. Marjorie Taylor Greene goes on to television and says, I'm a Christian nationalist. We should all be Christian nationalists. Last time I checked, none of those nationally elected Muslims have gone on the TV and said we should all be Muslim. But Marjorie Taylor Greene said, I'm a Christian nationalist. We should all be Christian nationalists. Lauren Boebert as well. And Pete Hegseth, the Secretary, I'm not going to say Secretary of War, the Secretary of Defense, is a part of the same denomination as Doug Wilson. Considers Doug Wilson to be a hero and a voice of moral clarity. You don't know who Doug Wilson is? You never heard of Doug Wilson? Let me introduce you to Doug Wilson. And I hope this is the clip that I want to show.
Biblical absolutists do. It is pretty simple.
No, that's not the clip that I want to show. This is a clip that I want to show.
For a slave owner to be a good Christian and have a Christian slave and treat him right. That's possible, which ardent abolitionists denied. So I would affirm the slave owners in the South had the better part of the argument there.
So presumably you'd find it hard to...
So now let me set the stage. So this is Doug Wilson in an interview with atheist Sam Harris. Remember the new atheism? Sam Harris was one of the stars of the now essentially defunct new atheism. Christopher Hitchens, Richard Dawkins. So this is a recent interview. I think this interview happened less than 2 weeks ago. Doug Wilson is talking about slavery, how he believes the Confederates were on the right side of the argument. And then Sam Harris asks this question. Listen.
Your descendants.
Let me rewind it a little bit.
You against. So presumably you'd find it hard to argue against your descendants in your Presbyterian utopia who decide to bring back the practice of slavery by recourse to the biblical reasoning.
Yeah, we'd have to have an argument, but I can assure you we would have one.
but it's an argument you would probably lose if you had recourse to only the Bible.
Well, I don't know.
Did you hear that? Doug Wilson makes the case the Bible condones and supports slavery. In a second, we're gonna address that claim. And essentially, he says the Confederates, they were on the right side of the slavery argument. Sam Harris astutely asks, okay, so you're a Christian nationalist. In your Christian nationalist utopia, what do people argue for the reestablishing of slavery based on the Bible? Sounds like you're going to lose that argument. Doug Wilson's response is not, absolutely not. Like, Doug Wilson says, that's an argument that we're going to have. Laughing about lurching our country back to a place where we will actually argue over whether we can legally enslave people. Hey, Sister Sandra Stringer, one of my members is on, y'all. This is one of the reasons why Christian nationalism is the number one threat. Because you've got a sympathetic president who doesn't mind if you agree with neo-Nazis like Nick Fuentes. We've got voices like Nick Fuentes is being normalized through platforms like Tucker Carlson's and Candace Owens. We've got voices like Doug Wilson, a spiritual advisor of the Secretary of Defense, laughing about having a national debate around legalizing slavery. Oh, it's an argument that we're going to have. Black church, wake up. Imagine these people having access to the levers of power. And now all of a sudden we turn on the TV and they're having a debate about slavery and whether or not slavery should be legalized in this country because of the Bible. And Doug Wilson is not the only voice. He's got many minions. Listen. I would not be ringing this alarm if it was just Doug Wilson off somewhere, right? Screaming and shouting. Oh yeah, he's crazy. He's always been crazy. But he has a growing following. As a matter of fact, he was just interviewed by the Wall Street Journal, where they called him a leading voice within Christian nationalism. And they are collecting all of these young, white, disaffected men. And they are making a play for power because they have a sympathetic president, listen, who still has 3 years in office. 3 years in office. So here's a question for rightly dividing the word. So you think in your lifetime slavery in America is possible? I think that if the Christian nationalists have their way, the Stephen Wolfs, the Doug Wilsons, the Joel Webbins, the Brian Sauves, then America will be lurched back. And yes, there will be debates about slavery. As a matter of fact, Joshua Haynes, who's another Doug Wilson minion, just went viral for essentially saying Christians should be arguing for the biblical nature of slavery. Christians should not apologize for the fact that slavery is biblical. Let me let you hear Doug Wilson again, because if this doesn't, if as a professing Christian that is full of the Holy Spirit, if this doesn't send chills down your spine, then something is wrong with you. Let me let you hear him again.
For a slave owner to be a good Christian and have a Christian slave and treat him right. That's possible, which ardent abolitionists denied. So I would affirm the slave owners in the South had the better part of the argument there.
So presumably you'd find it hard to argue against your descendants in your Presbyterian utopia who decide to bring back the practice of slavery by recourse to the biblical reasoning.
Yeah, we'd have to have an argument, but I can assure you we would have one.
but it's an argument you would probably lose if you had recourse to only the Bible.
Well, I don't know.
Christian nationalism is an apologetic issue. Number one, because it completely disregards the doctrine of the Imago Dei. It has a completely broken, 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 1 orthopraxy and orthopathy, what would cause somebody to laugh? What would cause somebody to laugh about having debates about slavery? And I guarantee they wouldn't be debating whether or not their sons and daughters can be enslaved. Doug Wilson has already said that whiteness and blackness is biological. Doug Wilson venerates men like R.L. Dabney. So the debate wouldn't be, can our sons and daughters be enslaved? Our meaning the Christian nationalists. The debate would, of course, be the same debate that we had a civil war over. So it's an apologetic crisis. Here's another reason why it's an apologetic crisis. Christian nationalism is far more lethal, far more insidious than Hebrew Israelism, because as far as the essentials are concerned, I probably agree with Doug Wilson on the essentials of the faith. So you can give intellectual and mental assent to the essentials of the Christian faith and be a Christian nationalist and think that just because you possess the requisite orthodoxy that you're a Christian. This is the epitome of what the Apostle Paul said in Acts 20. Remember Acts 20? I'm going to bring it up. Acts 20. Acts 20, the Apostle Paul is having a conversation with the pastors of Ephesus. And he says in Acts chapter 20, toward the end, he's about to go to Jerusalem. He knows and they know that he's going to get into some trouble in Jerusalem. But before he departs, this is what he says. He says, verse 28, pay careful attention to yourselves and to all the flock in which the Holy Spirit has made you overseers, to care for the church of God, which he obtained with his own blood. Paul is talking to pastors, remember. He goes on to say, I know that after my departure, fierce wolves will come in among you, not sparing the flock. Verse 30, and from among your own selves will arise men speaking twisted things to draw away the disciples after them. From among your own selves, they will be pastors that speak Christianese, that affirm orthodox doctrines, that can amen the essentials with vigor. But while you over here looking at Islam, they're coming from among your own selves. And so this is what makes Christian nationalism so insidious and so lethal. Orthodoxy, you can check that box in terms of the essentials. But the orthopraxy and the orthopathy, heretical. Hear me. Demons believe the essentials. Demons believe that Jesus is the Son of God. Demons probably have a higher Christology than most American Christians. If a man can sit there and laugh about debating slavery in the 21st century, that ought to let you know that something is horribly wrong, horribly broken with his orthopraxy and his orthopathy. It's an apologetic danger because unlike Hebrew Israelism, Christian nationalism has multi-ethnic appeal. You're not going to see a whole lot of, white folks, Asians. Most Hebrew Israelite camps don't allow white folks and Asians into their camp. But this is primarily a black and brown apologetic issue. Christian nationalism is multi-ethnic. This heretical version of Christianity is deceiving black people, brown people, yellow people, red people, white people. And the reason why it's the number one political threat is because they're at the levers of power now. This isn't like we have a 25-year plan to elect the president that will be sympathetic to our values and views. No, they have a sympathetic president, a sympathetic vice president who wouldn't even condemn. My brother Rick Barbeau is here. Salute to you, my friend and my brother. The vice president wouldn't even condemn those young Republicans texting vile and horrible things. Sympathetic president, sympathetic vice president, secretary of defense, elected officials in the Senate, in Congress, and a whole host of podcasters, pastors, a whole network of them. And they're poised and ready to lurch our country backwards to a time where essentially no one has value except white, professing Christian, heterosexual men. You kind of have to scratch your head. Kind of have this focus on Islam. We heard it from Philip Anthony Mitchell. We heard it from Ali Beth Stuckey. Why? Why don't you see this? There was an article written by a man named Todd Green. This was written in 2021. It was written for the Berkeley Forum. And there's an excerpt from this article that I want to read. Listen to what he says. He says, Franklin Graham, son of the renowned evangelist Billy Graham, claimed that Islam is bent on the extermination of Jews and Christians, meaning that the Christian West has no choice but to be at war with Islam. Jerry Falwell Jr., former president of Liberty University, suggested that if more, quote unquote, good people had gun permits, then we could end those Muslims before they walked in. Robert Jeffries, the senior minister of First Baptist Church in Dallas, insisted Islam is an oppressive and violent religion that promotes pedophilia. This anti-Muslim hostility has been matched by many rank and file white evangelicals. White evangelicals were among the most significant voting bloc for Donald Trump, with 81% of them voting in 2016 for a man who proclaimed that Islam hates us. Their support for Trump's White House later translated into solid support for his anti-Muslim proposals and policies, including the Muslim ban. with 3/4 of white evangelicals expressing support for the ban just 1 month after Trump took office. Broadly speaking, white evangelicals continue to harbor negative opinions of Muslims at higher levels than pretty much any other faith community, with 44% holding such views, listen, compared to just 13% of Jews. 44%, y'all, of white evangelicals harbor these negative opinions towards Muslims, and only 13% of Jews. So this is not just about Islam being a threat. There's something deeper here. He goes on, what we have been witnessing for quite some time is the instrumentalization of and support for racial and religious bigotry by many white evangelicals in an effort to embrace and defend a white Christian America. Of course, they're not going to see Christian nationalism as a number one threat, because that's the end goal. You think the end goal is the glorification of Jesus and the unity of all the nations in him? No. They want temporal political power, all of it, amass as much of it as they can. And they want America to essentially be a nation that codifies into law racial hierarchy. He continues, white evangelical support for discriminatory policies and practices that have targeted Muslims, detentions, deportations, extraordinary renditions, torture, surveillance, profiling, the Muslim ban must be understood as both an extension and a manifestation of this white Christian nationalist project, Confronting Christian Islamophobia by Todd Green. So you know how Trump, after realizing that he is absolutely implicated in the Epstein files, after the latest tranche of documents came out, he's reeling, recognizing that he's on the ropes. What does he do? I'm going to launch an investigation into Bill Clinton and into Larry Summers. Now, is Bill Clinton probably in the Epstein files? Yes. Larry Summers? Yes. Should they be held accountable? Absolutely. But Bill Clinton is no longer the president. Larry Summers, I don't know what Larry Summers is doing these days. He is intentionally deflecting away from the major primary issue to put the focus upon, yes, issues, problems. Yes, Bill Clinton, Larry Summers, we need to talk about them. But all it is a deflection away from him to them. And that's what this whole Islam thing is. Yes, Islam is a threat. Islam is a problem. Islam, yes, but it's nowhere near the threat that Christian nationalism poses. Let's address something else that Doug Wilson said. I've made a few videos on Doug Wilson, and I will continue to, as long as he is taken seriously by anybody. But let's hear Doug Wilson, one of the major architects of the modern Christian nationalist movement. Now, listen, there's something's in the water, y'all. If there's something in the water. If you've got NAR Pentecostals colluding with cessationist Presbyterians. Something's absolutely in the water. Okay. But I digress. Let me play this clip and let's address it. Again, this is the would-be national pastor if Christian nationalism is officially implemented in the U.S. Doug Wilson, listen.
In two parts. All that is necessary is for someone to affirm that someone like Philemon could exist in the first century.
Let me rewind it. Let me start it from the beginning. Listen.
What would a biblical absolutist do? It is pretty simple, actually, and comes in two parts. All that is necessary is for someone to affirm that someone like Philemon could exist in the first century, being both a slave owner and someone who walked with God. He could own slaves in that time, provided he followed the biblical instructions and was careful to treat his slaves with equity, Colossians 4:1. The second part is to affirm that someone just like Philemon could have lived in Alabama in 1850. He could own slaves, treat them biblically, and walk with God. If someone refuses to do this, then they might want to call themselves an inerrantist. But whatever they call it, it is just posturing.
Did y'all hear that? Did y'all hear that? Listen again. Listen to this guy.
Someone like Philemon could exist in the first century, being both a slave owner and someone who walked with God. He could own slaves in that time, provided he followed the biblical instructions and was careful to treat his slaves with equity, Colossians 4:1. The second part is to affirm that someone just like Philemon could have lived in Alabama in 1850. He could own slaves, treat them biblically, and walk with God. If someone refuses to do this, then they might want to call themselves an inerrantist. But whatever they call it, it is just posturing.
It was subtle, but he conflates American chattel slavery in the 1850s. Yeah, Chris, you got it. You got it. You got it. You got it. He just compared Philemon to a slaveholder in Alabama in 1850. If you are black or brown in America, wake up. This is deplorable, disgusting, but it's gaining steam. Now, of course, like what he's saying is so, when you know history and when you know the Bible, what he's saying is just so idiotic and ridiculous on its face. It's so dumb and unbiblical on its face. Like, there's no way that you can compare American chattel slavery in 1850 to Greco-Roman slavery in the first century. There is no biblical justification whatsoever in the Old or New Testaments for American chattel slavery. It's simple. It's simple. American chattel slavery. Remember these aspects and elements of American chattel slavery. Number one, the entire institution was built upon man stealing. There's a prohibition against man stealing both in Exodus 21 and in 1 Timothy 1. So if this system was built upon man stealing, the system itself is unbiblical and wrong, and every professing Christian should have opposed it on that grounds. If I open a McDonald's and I say, and I tell you as a professing Christian, yeah, I got the money to open this McDonald's from funds that I received after selling cocaine. as a Christian, you wouldn't support my McDonald's. Why? Because you know that the institution was built upon something unbiblical. If I said, yeah, I got the money for this McDonald's from prostitution, you'd be like, yeah, I can't support that McDonald's as a Christian, knowing that is what undergirds that. This is an underpinning of the institution. So number one, if the system, the institution is built upon man stealing, then there's no way that you can be a professing Christian and support it. That's number one. Number two, you ready? American chattel slavery was race-based. In the first century, slaves were white and otherwise. Slavery in the Old Testament, multiracial as well. Slavery really throughout history was not race-based. American chattel slavery was race-based, built upon this social construct called blackness. So Genesis 1:26, all human beings are created in the image of God. So on that basis alone, any professing Christian should have said, I can't support this institution, because you are singling out a specific people. And you are treating them, those specific people, as cattle simply because of the color of their skin. How does that align with the doctrine of the Imago Dei? How? It doesn't. There's no way. And then remember these last two. American chattel slavery was lifelong. Sure, you could free your slaves, but you didn't have to. I'm talking about the system, the institution. Oh, well, what if there was one or two slave owners and they were nice to their slaves and they allowed their slaves to, oh, what about that? No, as an institution, as a system, if the system says people can be held for life, then you as a Christian, you have a responsibility to oppose that system. Doesn't matter if 2 or 3 people decide to, move towards manumission or freeing. It doesn't matter. And then number 3, American chattel slavery was hereditary. If you were born to an enslaved person, you were enslaved by virtue of the fact that your mama is black. You became chattel the moment you entered into this world, simply because you were born to black parents. So you see, and then I think I talked about this. You guys know that I've dealt with this and I've talked about this previously. Just imagine that you're a professing Christian slave owner and you have Christian slaves, and you're confronted with all of the one another passages in the New Testament. How can you be a slave owner in 1850 and apply this text Romans 12:10. Outdo one another in showing honor. That text alone should have caused all of the professing Christian slave owners to free their slaves. There's a guy like Philemon in the 18th. You have to be a super duper rabid racist to conflate Philemon's situation to 1850 U.S. chattel slavery. But this is what we're up against. And this is why, listen. Troy Gauze, Pastor Troy Gauze is in the house. And Robert, I don't know if I officially shouted you out, but hello to you, my friend. God bless you. Listen, this is why this is the number one apologetic and political threat. Because this president still has 3 more years. And this president, he's already shown us where his loyalties lie, his intentions. Now, ultimately, Trump is about himself. Again, I don't think Trump is not Christian and he's not a nationalist. Trump is a Trumpist. He's about himself. But I absolutely do believe that he's a white supremacist, which is why he cannot bring himself to condemn white supremacists. Not just because he needs them, but because he is them. You guys don't understand how close this man, Doug Wilson, is to the levers of power. He's already advising politicians. He's already in the ear of policymakers. He was a speaker at TPUSA events. And let me remind you, for those of you guys just joining, I see Pete in the building. What's up? Salute to you, Pete. One of our members. Salute to Pete. Let me remind you of what America would look like if the Christian nationalists have their way. Listen to this.
For a slave owner to be a good Christian and have a Christian slave and treat him right. That's possible, which ardent abolitionists denied. So I would affirm the slave owners in the South had the better part of the argument there.
So presumably you'd find it hard to argue against your descendants in your Presbyterian utopia who decide to bring back the practice of slavery by recourse to the biblical reasoning.
Yeah, we'd have to have an argument, but I can assure you we would have one.
but it's an argument you would probably lose if you had recourse to only the Bible.
Well, I don't know.
Shout out to my brother Dwayne Brown, the first super chat of the broadcast. As a matter of fact, y'all, I think this is my first super chat, golly, in a while. But praise God for you, Dwayne. I appreciate you, man. Imagine, y'all, imagine waking up, turning on your TV, and hearing lawmakers, policymakers debate the merits of slavery. This is the country that the Christian nationalists want. And that's why I specifically said that this is a wake-up call to the Black church, because we have been the conscience of this nation. And now more than ever, we need to be speaking out boldly. I'm not just talking about, Jamal Bryant and Howard John Wesley saying things about Charlie Kirk. I'm talking about coming at the entire apparatus, calling out Christian nationalism as an ideology, as a movement. You can refer to specific names. I've done that here. But this is about opposing the entire apparatus, because guess what, y'all? American evangelicalism is too weak and complicit. They are ushering in the problem. This is a moment, yet another moment, for the Black church to stand up and say, not on our watch. Not on our watch. And again, this is a nonpartisan thing. And for the life of me, I don't understand why more quote unquote conservative people aren't speaking out against Christian nationalism. Because this isn't about Democrat, Republican. This is about gospel. This is about biblical. And this is about human dignity and human flourishing, and not just white dignity and white flourishing. So, this is certainly our number one threat. So I'm gonna look at your comments here, and then y'all, I'm a log off for now after I go through your comments. I'll actually be back on at 6:30 p.m. this evening, but it'll be for the Pacific District Missionary Baptist Association. Our Congress podcast is tonight at 6:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. We will be joined by my friend and my brother, Pastor Zion McGregor, and we'll be talking about biblical theology. But let me dig into some of these. Comments. My man Ash, American evangelicalism is not just complicit; they are active in promoting the evil. Yep. Amen. 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 Let's see. Ash says American evangelicalism is complicit. They fought abolition, they fought civil rights, and they're fighting to bring their idol religion of chattel slavery back. Absolutely. They are. They absolutely are. Let's see. The demonic man is laying the groundwork for attempts to re-enslave us. He's from the devil. Yep. Certainly. Let's see. Hold on. I wanted to address this one. I saw this one come in. Seems like slavery is your main concern. How far should the Black church be willing to take this fight? Slavery is one of my concerns. Main concern, it should be yours as well. It should be everyone's concern that they're so casual and cavalier about American chattel slavery and essentially trying to make slave owners in the antebellum South like Philemon. That should certainly be concerning. Main concern, I happen to be Black. That if there is a large delegation, a large group of people extremely close to the levers of political power having conversations about slavery and likening slave owners in the 19th century to people like Philemon, then yes, that's a main concern. That absolutely. Yep. And it should be a main concern, particularly of descendants of slaves. because descendants of slave owners want to re-enslave us. And they're using the Bible and Christian language to justify that push. How far should the black church be willing to take this fight? As far as, I mean, look, slavery, this isn't 1830, 2025. So we need to be involved in eradicating the scourge of Christian nationalism through, of course, peaceful means like this. I'm podcasting, I'm preaching, I'm writing. Others are doing that as well. So I feel like this is, kind of a leading question, but I'll respond. Now, at the point that they think they're going to send the Gestapo to our houses to put shackles around the ankles of our children and wives. Oh, this ain't 1830. But we don't want it to get there. That's why we're having conversations like this. That's why we're imploring people to wake up, because we don't want it to get to the point where Doug Wilson is now presiding as evangelical pope over the country, and he's dictating policy to the president, who's as dumb as a bag of nickels. And now we're sitting here talking about chattel slavery all over again and enacting policies. We're trying to prevent that. And that's what the black church has always done. Hey, y'all, do you see what's happening? Because God forbid they do try to come for us. God forbid. Let's see. Interesting. Evangelicals fought to be in church during pandemic. Attendance is way down since. Now the threat is Muslims will shut down churches. Church is just a political talking point. Yeah, absolutely. 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 All right. Let's see what else we got. Chris, I would ask Doug Wilson to be my slave if he feels that way. See, that's the whole point. That right there, though, that is the whole point. That is the whole point. Let me hold on. Let me put that back on screen. Do you think that if we really get to the point where they're debating re-implementing slavery, do you think that those powerful white men will be allowing slavery to be a multi-ethnic enterprise? Do you think that they would really put themselves into a position where they would have to see their loved ones become enslaved, their relatives, their friends become enslaved? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. All right, y'all. Like I mentioned, I'm going to be back on in a little over an hour with Reverend Zion McGregor. If you haven't subscribed to this channel, please subscribe to the channel. Got some exciting things coming up on this channel. I want you to be a part of it. This community is growing, but it will be so much better with you a part of it. Again, the Pacific District Missionary Baptist Association Congress of Christian Education. We will be having our monthly podcast tonight at 6:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Our guest will be Zion McGregor. We'll be talking about biblical theology. So if you don't have anything to do, come back in a little over an hour, and we'll be chatting. Yeah, it will be the black, brown folks and the poor whites. Yeah, Yeah. You know what, though? I think that I don't necessarily know if they would include the poor whites. They have to keep us. They can't allow us to unite. They can't allow poor whites to unite with black and brown folks, because then, not only will they be outnumbered, but the let's see. Hold on, I just see it. Okay, hold on. I'm going to respond to that. Not only will they be outnumbered, but they'll also lose precious votes and support. So I don't necessarily know if that will extend to poor whites. The lessons of Bacon's rebellion lets me know that they would much rather keep us separate, even though our interests are deeply aligned. Okay, so let's see. Shell, hold on. Is that a continuation of a quote of a comment? Shell, hold on, Shell. I'm the black church from Aaliyah. If so, with who? I don't know what you're saying. I don't know what you're saying. Are you saying, shall the black church form an alliance? I think that's what you're saying. Shall the black church form an alliance? If so, with who? Is that what you're saying? If that's what you're saying, driving. Got you. No problem. Be careful, Doc. Be careful driving in Texas. Listen, we've always welcomed and accepted all well-meaning allies that want to join with us in good faith. The black church has never been a racially exclusive institution. Never. That's one of the misconceptions. It's so funny because, you'll say the term black church and evangelicals will recoil and they'll say, oh, it's not going to be a black part of heaven, as if the term implies racial segregation. No, the term doesn't imply that we are exclusively black. We welcome all people, all races, all nationalities, anyone that wants to ally with us. And dare I say, I'm wearying of the word ally. I'm wearying of that word. And I actually prefer the word accomplice. We need accomplices. Okay. We need people that won't just pat us on the back and say, yeah, we're with you. We need people that will get down in the bunker with us. We'll get on our podcast and write. We need people like, what's his name? Matthew Pridgeon. Matthew Pridgeon is an accomplice. So yeah. Uh-oh. Look, with Muslims. So let me ask you this question. If you are protesting an abortion clinic and a Muslim comes and stands beside you to join you in protesting that abortion clinic, are you going to go home because they're Muslim? No. Their support doesn't mean you all of a sudden become Muslim. You become open to saying I forget the words that you have to recite in order to become Muslim, about Muhammad being a prophet and things of that. It doesn't mean that. It just means that they recognize Muslims are people too. And because we're all created in the image of God, we're able to recognize when image bearers are being treated unjustly and unfairly. And if a Muslim says this isn't right, and we want to help to eradicate the country and the world of this injustice, yeah, I mean, is that a problem that we say, okay, come and let's do that together? Just like you would probably stand side by side with a Muslim to protest abortion. All right. Dr. Kevin Roberts, the president of the Heritage Foundation, got his PhD studying Black resistance. He's very dangerous. Look up his dissertation. It's chilling. Oh, send it to me, JM. I definitely want to see that. I definitely want to check that out. I definitely totally agree on the word ally. Your presence isn't enough. You need some skin in the game. Facts, facts, facts. Really, you enjoy Warnock Church? Invite like Andrew Gillum. Okay. Yeah, no comment. The Shahada, that's what it is. That's what it is. That's what it is. I don't understand these questions. If a Hebrew Israelite decides to stand next to you while you are protesting an abortion clinic, will you go home because that person is a Hebrew Israelite? Or will you continue to protest the abortion clinic alongside of the Hebrew Israelite? This is the, now listen, I'm not saying this about you. I don't know. Honestly, I don't know who you are. I thought I knew who you were, but I'm not sure. This is a problem. This is the problem. Like, we are not interested in playing the boogeyman game. That's how we got in this mess in the first place. Because we have a president who presents a boogeyman, says boo to the country, and then unfortunately a large majority of people, as far as this last election is concerned, scream and say and they recoil because the president throws up a boogeyman. Boo. MS-13, boo, right? Like black people, boo. Okay? We're not interested in the boogeyman. And it's crazy because the issue is injustice and implementing a perverted form of Christianity and it's and making that sort of the national religious movement under which we all languish. Anybody who has any sense should oppose this. Anybody who has a shred of and an ounce of decency and morality should oppose this. And so, yes, we are not concerned about the boogeyman. We're concerned about justice and truth. So, all right, y'all. JM, my email address. Yeah, I'll shoot you my email address because I definitely want to see that. That's interesting. Hey, So Bright. Okay, y'all. I need some. My brain is starting to fry a little bit, so I need some time before I hop back on here with the Congress broadcast. Hold on. All right. These other groups are peaceful. There are peaceful Muslims, and there are peaceful Hebrew Israelites. As a matter of fact, I would venture to say that the Muslims that would be willing to join with Christians to oppose Christian nationalism these probably wouldn't be the radicalized Muslims. And then the Hebrew Israelites that join alongside Christians to oppose Christian nationalism probably wouldn't be the camp types. So yes, there are, you may not, I don't know if how much you ventured outside of, your bubble, but I've met personally very nice, peaceful, cordial, delightful Muslim people. I vehemently disagree with them on theology. I believe that Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. I believe that Islam is not true and that Muhammad was a false prophet, but they are still nice people. And there are peaceful Hebrew Israelites as well. All right, y'all. Appreciate y'all. Thank you, Pete. Thank you, Rochelle. I'm about to rest my voice. See y'all 6:30. Peace out, y'all. Bye-bye.